What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we have a bit of a different one again. I'll of course be breaking down some players, but in this one I'll be aiming to find value in players due to under or overreactions to the scoring format. So what do I mean by this? Obviously, the value of players will change depending on the format you're in. Some players get their value from rushing yardage, touchdowns like Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, while other players, they get more of their value from receptions, kind of like Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler. But are there players that the market is undervaluing because their drop in value is less than their drop in ADP? That's the thinking, at least. In practice, it's actually kind of difficult. So most sites have just trash ADP data until like the very last week of August or even into September. So finding accurate data is difficult. We trust Underdog the most. I found their data to be the best, but they're only half PPR. So we have nothing on Underdog to compare it to. I've decided to use FFPC data. Fantasy Football Calculator is pretty bad. Yahoo, NFL, ESPN are all complete trash. And so a lot of other sites, they don't really have like easily accessible data. FFPC is paid leagues. Their data does look accurate. It's not perfect because we prefer to have the same site with different formats, but that just doesn't exist. Basically, it's impossible to do. And so we're going to have to compare across sites. But I've looked through these. They look accurate. They look like what I've seen. And so we're just going to roll with it. Also, don't worry about them being like different types of leagues. We're only comparing running backs. So I'm not comparing overall rankings because if you don't know, FFPC also has like, I think 1.5 scoring for tight ends. Like anything else that's different does not matter. I'm only looking at where you rank among running backs. So it's absolutely fine to look across different leagues like this. So that is the setup. And the goal, remember, is to just identify players who are seeing a difference in their ADP when you change from half PPR to full PPR, but who aren't seeing big enough of a boost, or maybe their ADP falls more than it should. Maybe their ADP should stay the same because they're just as valuable, but it's not. It's decreasing, and we can take advantage of that. So we'll get to all of that in a second, but first, have to start things off as usual. The stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was that Darren Waller and George Kittle have each had at least 85 receptions in 2 of their first 5 seasons. Who is the only tight end to do so in 4 of their first 5 seasons? The answer is Jimmy Graham. Inside My Mind was the first to get that on YouTube, and @_Hoddard was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat. 3 players had at least 200 receiving yards in a game last season. Tyreek Hill, Tyler Lockett, and who was the third? Okay, let's do this. So I have picked the relevant running backs that are off by the most. So I'm not looking in like the 80s, the 90s among running backs on each site. I only pulled the top 60. And for the most part, if we're being honest, the market was incredibly efficient, which is frustrating because I spent a lot of time trying to find these different differences, but the market was efficient. When a running back was, according to my projections, more valuable when we switch from half PPR to full PPR, their ADP did go up for the most part. When they were less valuable, we saw the ADP go down. So I guess that's a good thing. It means that this comparison makes sense. The data is not complete trash, but it was frustrating that there weren't huge differences. So these differences you see are not going to be massive, but again, we shouldn't expect them to be, right? If we're drafting on a site and people are paying to be in these leagues, if there was some massive edge, it would be exploited, right? So if we're seeing a huge difference, it probably means that the data is wrong. But there are a few players that we have identified that are different, and so we'll go over them now. First up, Joe Mixon. Mixon's ADP drops from the running back 12 in half PPR to the running back 14 in full PPR, despite being slightly more valuable in full PPR. He increases from 10th in my half PPR projections to 9th in my full PPR projections, being half a point per game more valuable in full PPR scoring. Also, I do think it is important to point out, when I say value here, I've calculated value based off of the top bench option, what they would provide in points per game. So running backs, we're looking at the running back 31. That's 12 running back ones, 12 running back twos, 6 being used in the flex. That's assuming that half of the teams in a 12-team league use a wide receiver, half of them use a running back in the flex. That's 30. 31 is the top bench option. Obviously, your bench could have better or worse options, but we're saying on average, that's the thinking behind what we're comparing each player to. So our 50th projected running back is going to have negative value because he provides less value over the top bench option. Christian McCaffrey has a massive value number because in terms of points per game, he scores a ton more in the top bench option. So that's what I mean by value. So if we look at Joe Mixon, he's expected to score 5.7 more points per game than the 31st best running back under half PPR, and 6.2 points per game more than the 31st best running back under full PPR. That's an increase of 0.5 points per game, which is what I mean when I say he's half a point per game more valuable when you switch to PPR scoring. If that is confusing to you, please just go back, listen to it again. I promise you listen to it again, it will make sense. Just understand that I am not saying he is projected to score half a point per game more. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying his value increases by half a point per game. So going back to what we were talking about, it doesn't make sense for his ADP to drop 2 running back spots, given that his value should be increasing. Mixon has averaged 2.6 receptions per game over his career, but that was up to 3.5 last season. And with the departure of Giovanni Bernard, we have to assume he's going to catch a ton of passes again this year. Now, I've gone over why personally I am less likely to take Joe Mixon. We did the breakdown. I said Najee Harris and Antonio Gibson I would prefer over Joe Mixon. And to reiterate my point from that video, it's not that I think Mixon will be bad. I think he's got a top 5 ceiling. I think he could crush this season. I just tend to lean towards other players in the range that he goes. And since in general, Joe Mixon does go before Najee Harris and Antonio Gibson, well, if I like both of them more, I'm just unlikely to take Joe Mixon, even if I think he is a quality pick this season. But that does not change the fact that Mixon should be going earlier in PPR leagues, but he's not. So if you understand that and you want to target Joe Mixon, you want to be doing it in a full PPR league, you're gaining value if you do that. The next running back up is probably the most surprising on the list for me, and that's Aaron Jones. His ADP drops from the running back 11 to the running back 12, despite being slightly more valuable in full PPR. My projections have him rise from the running back 9 to the running back 8 in full PPR, and that might not seem like a lot, but Jones is also an entire point per game more valuable in full PPR, so his ADP going down is crazy to me. You could argue that maybe drafters are scared of Aaron Rodgers, right? You're like, oh, it's just because of the Rodgers situation. Well, both formats have the same information. Like, you understand that, right? Like, if it's not like full PPR drafters are scared of Aaron Rodgers leaving, whereas half PPR people aren't. Like, the situation is the same. Aaron Jones averages 3.2 receptions per game over these last 2 seasons. And while he absolutely sees a spike when Adams is out, his numbers are still solid with him in there. As far as drafting him is concerned, I do think we're going to have more clarity on this situation soon. Who knows? Maybe something happens over these next few days and you guys actually know when you're watching the video what Rodgers' decision is going to be. But I do expect his ADP to adjust evenly no matter what the news is. So if Rodgers stays, well, his ADP is going to go up in both formats, I think, at the same level, and they're going to drop in both formats if he leaves. So I'm not expecting his ADP to like skyrocket in full PPR and stay the same in half PPR or vice versa. So really, no matter what happens with this Aaron Rodgers situation, no matter if he stays or leaves, I think that if we're just comparing half to full PPR, I think Aaron Jones is going to be undervalued in full PPR and that you should take advantage of that. Another running back being undervalued is Chris Carson. His ADP stays the exact same. He's a running back 18 in both formats, but he's 2 running back spots more valuable in full PPR according to my projections. Increases from the running back 19 to the running back 17, providing 0.8 points per game more value in full PPR. And that's definitely a tad confusing. My personal projections have him jumping over David Montgomery, over J.K. Dobbins when we're transitioning from half to full PPR. Montgomery, of course, Cohen's returning this season, and he's got the potentially mobile quarterback Justin Fields taking over. Plus, Fields is a rookie, so there are just a little bit more unknowns with how he's going to split the targets. Then obviously Dobbins, he has an extremely limited reception ceiling. So even if I think he's going to be fantastic on the ground, obviously, he has less value in a full PPR league. So the fact that Carson's ADP stays the same, I don't fully understand. Also, if you guys do want to see, it kind of reminded me with that Dobbins take. If you want to see the opposite of this video, then let me know. I already have all the research done, so it'd be pretty easy to just create the opposite. But if you want me to go over running backs that you should be avoiding in full PPR leagues because they do see a lot less value when switching to that format and their ADPs aren't dropping enough, let me know. I use your comments. I use how much you click the like button to gauge your interest in a video. And so if you don't click the like button on this one, I guess I won't do that. But if you do want to see that, let me know in the comment section, click the like button. Just let me know that you're actually interested in this sort of content. But back to Carson, I don't get why his ADP would be staying the same. He averaged 3.1 receptions per game last season, and he's pretty much immune to whatever Seattle does offensively. If they go run heavy, well, he'll crush on the ground. He'll still mix in receptions for sure, because even when they went run heavy last season, he had receptions. And if they do finally lean towards the pass, well, he's obviously going to have a big boost in receptions, and so he'll be more valuable in full PPR. So I'm starting to warm up to Carson. It's a good offense, we know that. Obviously an elite quarterback, still just turning 27, so he's not too old. They just signed him to a 2-year extension. His only competition is Penny, is he ever going to recover from this knee injury? Probably not. Travis Homer, Collins, DJ Dallas, none of these guys are big threats. I don't know. I feel like I need to include him in one of the Thursday breakdown videos. So if you guys are coming to a decision around Carson and maybe you're taking someone consistently ahead of him or you're unsure of Carson or another back, let me know if there's a decision like that you keep coming to, and I'll include him in, I don't think it's going to be next week, maybe the week after that, the breakdown videos that we do on Thursday, because I feel like right now I don't have him listed as a target, but I think once I stop recording this video, I think I'm going to go in, move him up in the rankings, have him as a target, and I kind of want to do an in-depth breakdown on him compared to some of these other running backs around him, because I feel like maybe we're undervaluing the value of Carson, and it seems like the community is as well, so maybe this is an area that we can take advantage of this season. But if you want to see that, you just got to let me know. Next up, we've got Myles Gaskin. Now, Gaskin's ADP drops 2 spots from the running back 24 to the running back 26, but I have him projected as running back 23 in both formats. And interestingly enough, he gains 0.7 points per game in value more when you switch formats. And so I was like, well, how is he still the running back 23 under both formats? Right? I think if he gained that much value over the bench option, you'd think he'd go up in points per game, you'd think he'd go up in projection. And he goes up in projection, but when we're comparing the running backs behind him, there's a cliff. One spot after him is Etienne, but if we look at value, goes to Etienne. Then there's a pretty big jump down to Hunt and Edmonds, and then just a cliff to David Johnson, Mostert, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, and Damian Harris. Those 6, it's incredible how just stark the drop off is. So even though they're technically right after all these backs I just mentioned, Hunt, Edmonds, Etienne, and Gaskin, they're right after them in the projections and the rankings, but there's a huge difference in value. So that's why when we assign more points to reception, it's because the group below Gaskin is just so bad. It's just projected so poorly that any sort of increase in these projections just makes Gaskin even more valuable. So that's why he can go up in value, but not necessarily increase in his like overall ranking among the running backs. Hope that makes sense, but it did at least to me. But yeah, back to Gaskin. My projections do assume that he's going to get the lead role. It doesn't assume that he's going to be like some monster feature back like other guys are going to mix in, but it assumes he's going to win the job, and that is a role that, you know, results in 4.1 receptions per game. Last season, he was just incredibly involved in the receiving game. We should not expect that to change this season if he gets the lead role. My only reservation is that he's not actually like a super talented running back. They're not heavily invested in him. So if they decide to go in a different direction, we can't just be sitting here like shocked, right? You can't be shocked in week 4 if he's all of a sudden not the starting running back, because again, he's not that talented and they don't have that much invested in him. However, we're comparing across scoring formats for this video, and that risk is the exact same under half and full PPR. So you should not see any drop, and yet he does. He does drop when we go into full PPR leagues, which makes no sense because a large portion of his game is the receptions. So if you like Myles Gaskin, which I do think a lot of you like him, definitely a player you should be targeting specifically in a full PPR league. So those are the running backs that you should be going after if you're playing in full PPR leagues, since their value is not correctly being accounted for. Again, if you want to see the opposite of this video, so players to avoid in a full PPR format because of these same discrepancies, then let me know. And if you want to see it for wide receivers, let me know about that as well. And also let me know about Carson. Are there running backs going around Carson that you want to see an in-depth breakdown on, deciding between Carson and these other backs? You just got to put it in the comment section and I will make it into a video. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? But thanks for watching.